Rodney Dangerfield, right? You know, I don't get any respect. That guy. He always starts off his talks, his comedy routine. He would always say, "I'm all right now, but last week I was in rough shape. I was in rough shape last week." And I would start off a little bit like that today, when I would say, "I'm all right now, but 20 years ago I was in rough shape. I was in rough shape." And he always talked about Rodney Dangerfield. He said, "I always said that because if I just started off with you know, all his ailments and stuff that he would joke about, people would be more concerned about whether or not he was okay, rather than just being able to enjoy his act." So he just would always start with, "I'm all right now, but last week I was in rough shape." So the reason I'm starting off with that today is because I'm going to share some things with you as part of my own journey, which may be a little bit shocking or a little bit curious. And so what I want you to do when I get to that part is think, well, he's all right now, but 20 years ago he was in rough shape. Like I bet a lot of you are maybe in rough shape 20 years ago as well. And Rodney Dangerfield would always talk about, he grew up in a rough neighborhood, right? The neighborhood was rough. And he talked about the time that when he was born, the doctor slapped him, and then the nurse got him a couple of good shots before they gave him to his mother, right? And I use that joke also for a reason, because I'm going to talk about BioSpirituality today. And BioSpirituality is very simply, bio equals living, spirituality, we'll talk more about that in a few minutes, but essentially it's living spirituality that creates a space for the one thing that we carry around with us from cradle to grave. And oftentimes in spirituality we just don't know what the heck to do with it. And that's our physiological body, right? The body that we carry from cradle to grave. So what role does the body have in spirituality? That's going to be the focus of my talk today. And I find that it really dovetails incredibly well with prosperity consciousness and unity spirituality. So it was not ironic today that in talking about this, that you guys, everybody who, you guys were joking about, making mistakes, right? Like mistake number 1, mistake number 2, mistake number 3. And it's not ironic, really wonderful actually that happened, because that dovetails with what I'm going to talk about today, about the role of vulnerability within the backdrop of what we know as unity to be true. That we are perfect, wonderful expressions of who creation is. We are prosperous, powerful, creative, loving, kind. Now, we don't say that at Unity as a theory or hyperbole. Like, we know that to be true. That's not a theory to us. That we are expressions of divinity. However, our bodies sometimes want to say something else. Like, I got a headache, or I got a backache, or I don't want to get out of bed to go to work today, or I feel really sad, or sometimes it's so funny. I do a lot of my meditation in the morning, even before I take a shower and stuff. So I'm doing like affirmations, and literally, through prayer and affirmation, I feel just light and energetic and optimistic, and can just imagine and visualize an amazing day that's going to come, and it actually does come most of the time. But then I go and literally walk from my meditation area into the bathroom, and I look in the mirror, and it's like, oh my gosh, my hair is all over the place, and it's like I gained weight, and it's like, oh, that image in the mirror doesn't quite look like the image I had when I was sitting in my chair doing my affirmations. Like, what the hell happened between my office So we're going to talk about that, and to sort of set the context a little bit, I want to just start off with a poem that really speaks to the vulnerability of us as humans and what the heck to do with that in a prosperity consciousness kind of way. So it goes like this. It's a Robert Bly poem. Some of you may have heard it before. When men and women come together, how much they have to abandon. Wrens make their nests of fancy threads and string ends. Animals abandon all their money each day. What is it that men and women leave? Harder than a wren's doing. They have to abandon They're longing for the perfect. What caused us each to live hidden? A wound, the wind, a parent. Sometimes we wait in a helpless way, awkwardly, not yet whole and not yet healed. When we hid the wound, we fell back from a human to a shelled life. And then I understand I love you with what in me is still changing. I love you with what in me is unfinished. I love you with what in me may not have yet found its holy body. So, just taking those words in, it sort of sets a paradox between what we know in prosperity consciousness and unity consciousness is indeed, in the spirit world, we are perfect. We are perfect expressions of kindness, creativity, love, beauty, prosperity, intention. We are perfect in the spirit world. But we have this other part, this body part, that sometimes doesn't quite feel so perfect. And this is the area of BioSpirituality, and I hope that today, by the end of our time together, you will have made or deepened a relationship that you've had forever with your own physically felt body. Clarissa Pinkola Estes talks about the body. She says, our body is a multilingual being. The body remembers, the bones remember, even the little fingers remember. Memory is lodged in pictures and feelings in the cells themselves. Like a sponge filled with water, everywhere the flesh is pressed, wrung, even touched lightly, a memory may flow out in a stream. To confine the beauty of our bodies and the value of our body to anything less than this magnificence is to force the body to live without its rightful form, its right to exaltation. So in 1992, right after I was finishing graduate school in Oakland, California, I met these two psychologists, Dr. Ed McMahon, and everybody jokes after he left the Tonight Show, he took up BioSpirituality in the mountains in Coltonville, California. But it's a different guy. Dr. Edwin McMahon, Dr. Peter Campbell, who really were the forces behind BioSpirituality. And I went to live and work with them in Coltonville, California, which was about 30 minutes outside of Yosemite, in this incredibly magical, beautiful, enchanting area that we could easily hop over to Yosemite. And essentially what we did there is they had written a number of books. One of the books was called On Becoming a Person in the Whole Christ in the early 1970s. It was actually on the New York Times bestseller list for a time in the religion section. So very accomplished, and they wrote several books, one called BioSpirituality, one Beyond the Myth of Dominance. And when I was there, I wrote their training curriculum, which they've used for decades now, in training people on how to do BioSpirituality or body spirituality. And it sort of was summarized, summarize it this way, that these two psychologists, Ed and Pete, they were both graduate students of Carl Rogers. Some of you probably know him, the person-centered, incredibly wonderful psychologist, father of humanistic psychology in the U.S. And they set out to study as psychologists, but they were also happened to be Jesuit Catholic priests. And they set out to study what's healthy, what's really healthy in the practice of religion and spirituality. Great question. And at the same time, unbeknownst to them, there was a professor at the University of Chicago by the name of Dr. Eugene Genlin. And he set out to study from a psychological perspective what actually is healthy and helpful in the practice of psychotherapy and psychology. And so in a parallel time period, and ultimately Genlin won the award for the most beneficial, contribution for psychology in 1972, and it was this whole area of BioSpirituality. So what did these brilliant researchers find? Separate from each other, parallel, but at the same time, what Brendalyn found was that healthy spirituality, the healthy practice of actually psychology across the country, was this, was that if in the psychological practice, two things happened, there were positive outcomes that people really felt good about. One, if there was a role for the body in the healing process, then typically there would be a positive outcome. If there was a role for people being able to listen to what was most real inside of them and create an environment around it where it could unfold and tell its story, that typically that was a healthy psychological process. On the other side, these two priest psychologists, Ed and Pete, that I worked with for many years, they said, studying spiritual practices, they said almost exactly the same thing. That if a person's spiritual practice was beyond just cognition or thinking, and really owned deeply in their body, with an environment around it, so that it would unfold and tell its story, sort of in divine timing, then it was a healthy spiritual practice. The other thing they found, and I'm going to switch into a story within a story here, had something to do with this process called process skipping. Process skipping. And to illustrate process skipping, I'll tell you about an experience that I had in a classroom of fifth graders who had just come back from summer vacation. And so everybody, we were there talking and asking people, well, what did you do for the summer? And the kids were all excited. And then I just asked them the question. I said, well, did any of you guys have a hard time or experience any sadness or difficulties in the summertime? And yeah, they said, I've hurt my knee and had other little difficulties in their little fifth grade childhood world. And then I asked them the question. I said, well, what do you do? What do you do when you start to feel sad or afraid or a little shy or whatever's going on like that? What do you do? And of course, one kid's hand shot up and he said, well, I go outside and I just play sports. I get out there and go out in the woods or play softball. Another kid said, I like to go watch TV. Another kid said, well, I just go take a nap. Another kid said, I'll usually go get something to eat. Another kid said, I'll go help my mom and dad with something. So they're, you can tell they're strategizing, just like we do as adults. Like, what do we do when we feel sad or vulnerable or we make mistakes, which we all do? It's a condition of being human. What do we do? And then finally, one little girl raised her hand and she said, I pray. I pray when I have sadness or I have difficulties or I have shyness or fear or what have you. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool that you pray. And then one more hand came up in the very back. And I knew this girl because I knew her mother. And this little girl very calmly and centered, from a centered place, said, when I feel afraid or angry or sad, what I do is I sit with it in a gentle, listening way. I try to create an attitude of compassion, caring around it, until it either feels better or it turns into something else that might help me more. So I was like, wow, this kid really is intuitive. It kind of turns out she was trained to do this since she was a little kid. So what's healthy in spiritual practice and what's healthy in psychological practice is when we have our vulnerabilities, which we all do. I love the story about the Navajo rugs, that the beautiful artists who weave Navajo rugs always, always, always leave a defection, an imperfection in that rug. And oftentimes talk about this is where spirit can come in. And it's not just in rugs. It's in our own imperfections, our own vulnerability, where spirit can get in. So that's, to me, good news, because I can give myself a pat on the back. You know, when I feel like after my meditations and affirmations in the morning, when I float in on the energy of God into the bathroom, feeling like Mother Teresa or something like that. And I look in the mirror, just like, holy, whoa, what is that? You know what I mean? It's holy smokes. An opportunity for forgiveness and healing. So this whole body piece is like really important. And it's oftentimes completely overlooked. Because like those little kids that I talked about in the classroom, it's like, they raise their hands and say, I go exercise, it's like a good choice, right? I go out in the woods and hike or whatever. That's a good choice, a reasonable choice. I go get something to eat, whatever the case may be. However, those types of choices don't address the story and the reality of what I'm carrying inside right now at this moment. So, it brings us to the next question. How does our body communicate with us? There's a study, I'm not a Catholic anymore. I'm the non-denominational unity person. But I was Catholic, for a long time. And I oftentimes had this question about perfection and sort of aspiring to perfection, like like Mother Teresa or one of the saints or what have you. So vulnerabilities were things that you kind of wanted to stay away from or get rid of. And I took this class when I was in undergraduate. And I loved it. It was a great class. It sounded horrible, but it was good. It was called epistemology. Anybody heard about that? Epistemology? I think it's a philosophy class. Epistemology. And really, ultimately, it's like the study of how people know stuff. Like, how do we know stuff? And one way humans know stuff, and this is like our communication to each other, our communication to ourselves, our communication is sort of bouncing off of things that are happening in our daily life. One way we know stuff is through thoughts, right? Cognitions, what's going on up here in our head. And most people in our general culture we're tailored or trained to spend most of our time between our ears with our thoughts. And sometimes that can be, I don't know about you, but for me, that can be a really scary place. I mean, when I'm in sort of my little self, my mind only wants three things, and that's control of me, all of you, and the environment. God can have the rest. So sometimes that's not a good place to hang out. And then there's like a little bit deeper level of communication about how our bodies, our own consciousness, communicate with us. And that's through emotions, happiness, sadness, joy, fear, shame, excitement, all those kind of things. And unfortunately, most of us, unless you grew up in a really, really, really special way, or learned this as an adult, most of us weren't, what the heck do we do with all these feelings? So my truth is that I am infinite, perfect health and spirit. That's the truth. That is the truth. And yet, my body may say, I have a horrible stomachache and I just feel crummy. So my body is saying that. So, or I feel a degree of sadness or whatever. So we have all of these emotions. And emotions are beautiful gifts. They say that dogs can smell over 1 million different shades of scent. And for humans, we are so awesome that we can take in information in over 1 million shades of emotion. That finely and divinely and nuanced information that we take in through our emotions. Our emotions tell us about people, places, and things, ourselves that we're interacting with in the world. So that's another way that our consciousness, our body, communicates with us. And a lot of us were taught that those are the enemy. It's not okay to be angry. It's not okay to cry. It's not okay to just blast out laughter in the middle of a room or what have you. All those messages that some of us got and some of us got a lot of. So there's thoughts, feelings, and then the third way that our consciousness, our divine consciousness, communicates with us. And that's through symbols, intuitions, and dreams. These are so, so, so beautiful. And oftentimes those come from our right brain or our heart center. And the right brain is always speaking in allegory, in poetry. There's a sense of timelessness, a sense of absolute unity in where these dreams, intuitions, and symbols come from. What a gift. Like, I'm talking like a Christmas gift wrapped up in the prettiest paper and the prettiest bow, if we know how to be with it. Another way that our consciousness talks to us is through physical sensations, like tears behind our eyes, or butterflies in our stomach, or excitement in our body, or optimism in our smile and our laughter. That physical sensations are another way. Like, sometimes you may have, this happens to me all the time. When the phone rings, I so oftentimes know who exactly is on the other end of the line. You just get this hit, like, okay, that's who it is, you just kind of know, right? Or if someone is talking about you, like if you're at work or wherever you're hanging out, you walk into the room and there's a little group of people who've been talking about you, you just get this, you know that, you kind of get that feeling, right? And then lastly, the way that our internal consciousness talks to us is through this wonderful concept that Jim Clarkson described, and he calls it a felt sense. And this is really the area of this quantum entanglement that we all experience when we come together with open minds and open hearts and a willingness to be touched in some way by each other. This felt sense, he said, is part physical sensation, part feeling, part thought, part image, part intuition. It's like how we carry the whole of something in our body. So if I say Christ consciousness, probably all of us will get a sense of what does that mean to us in my body? And it's not just about thoughts. It's about relationship. It's about love. It's about symbols. It's about more than any one thing. It's the felt sense of a situation. Sometimes you will go to a job interview or something where you're putting yourself out there, and you walk in and you get this felt sense. You just get a feeling of it. When I go to work when I go to sort of check out new clients, corporate clients, I always go 10 minutes early, and I always go and I sit. First of all, I go to the parking lot, and then walk into the reception. Yes, and just sit there, and just take some nice deep breaths and ask myself, what the heck does it really feel like to be here? Like, more than just the thoughts, more than just the feelings, but like, what does it feel like just to be a human in this place? That's one of the reasons I love coming here so much. Like, yeah, I feel like it feels okay to be human, powerful, beautiful, intuitive, and out there, here, in this beautiful sanctuary with you beautiful beings here. So, the felt sense is, and I just want to read a quote about how Brendalyn talks about the felt sense. He talks about it this way, that the felt sense connects us to our source, because it's more than words, more than feelings, more than intuitions, more than symbols. It's all of those things. And it's not controllable. We can't sort of get it into a box just by thinking it right. It's bigger than that. And Brendalyn said, actually Ed McMahon, my colleague, said this. He said, your physically felt body is in fact part of a gigantic system. Your body. Part of a gigantic system of here and other places. Now and other times. You and other people. This sense of being bodily alive in a vast system is the body of Christ as it is felt inside us right now.
Amen.
Thank you. It is deep, calling on deep. It is the ping of grace connecting with the ping of our own bodily connection. so that we can be drawn to and connect with those things that fulfill and support our best and highest good. Now, that's not a theory. That's really how it works. So let's say we're beginning to get in touch with our thoughts, feelings, intuitions, felt senses, physical sensations. How do we create an environment so that those can unfold and tell their story? Well, I want to talk about a couple of things here. One, there's this amazing study in science right now called epigenetics. Has anyone heard about epigenetics? Some of you have heard about epigenetics. Let me share a little bit of my understanding of epigenetics because it's so incredibly beautiful and so incredibly affirming. Let's see what we got here. All right, let's have a little time. Epigenetics essentially addresses the question of, empirical science has long said that genetics is what causes most of us to grow into the people that we are, with our perfections, imperfections, how our hair looks, how our, just kind of how we look, how we are, what diseases may unfold. And epigenetics teaches that that's mostly, absolutely inaccurate. That as you study genetics closely, what becomes crystal clear is the genetics that we have are like blueprints for a house or a building, like an architect would build a house or a building. Essentially, in our genetic code is a blueprint for what's possible for us, right? But what is the house or the building or us actually going to look like? What determines that? And we used to think, doctors, and even today, you will hear this today all the time. Well, it's just genetics. I work in the world of mental health and addictive disorders largely. And people always say, well, it's just genetics, or, you're kind of stuck with this. But what science is showing us now is it is absolutely, positively not the case. That what determines what on that blueprint is going to potentiate or actualize are some very, very interesting things. And let me share with you what some of them are. So, in order to express the positive potential in our little genetic blueprints, what needs to happen? Our little chromosomes and genes need to hear things like, you are beautiful. You are powerful energy of God. You are loved. They also need to get the message that we care about them by exercising and moving. Sunlight. These little suckers need a lot of sunlight, right? They like to be out in the sun, and they like to move. Just like little Pac-Men, Pac-Men, Pac-Women, they need to eat to be healthy. And what those little suckers, science shows that they need to eat? They need to eat things like you are infinite kindness. You, or I in this case, are infinite love, are infinite creativity, are infinite prosperity, infinite beauty, infinite divine energy. That pumps them up, along with sunlight and exercise and good nutrition. It pumps them up. So if something is going to potentiate, like I always talk about, I've got three brothers. God love them, the little Texans that they are. And they actually, I think we all had the gene for substance use disorders, right? So my three brothers, they went down that road, severe. It's a wonder there's any beer or drugs left in Texas. That's all I'm saying. They got them all. And for some reason, that didn't happen to me. And I think because of teachers and other people, and I got into a spiritual path really young, that I think those are on board. But that didn't potentiate in my life. Why? Because I had energy, positive role models, social support, social connectedness, read lots of books, found unity at a really young age. So I'm like saying, like, thank you, God. Thank you, God. But it's like so true that for us, you know, this used to really kind of tick me off. I was in a 4T class in Houston, the Pyramid in Houston. And it was my first time. And, you know, we would talk about, well, you know, we're saying all these affirmations, and it seems like really hard. Like I feel like I'm not getting it, or sometimes I don't want to do it. And the minister there, he would look at me and he would say, well, you got to do the affirmations in the process when you don't feel like it. I said, well, okay, I figured he was going to say that. And I said, well, why? And he said, because they're most powerful at that time. And I'm like, yeah, right, you know, yeah, sure. And here it is now, you know, looking at the epigenetic makeup of all of us, that it turns out that's true. Because when we don't feel like it, or if we feel kind of inward or withdrawn or don't want to step into our own divine energy, it's especially important to do our prayers and our affirmations and step into our power at that moment. Why? Because that's when the chromosomes and the genetics most need to hear it, right? So offering that kind of compassion and support to that place. There's another bodily sense here, something called telomeres. Let me just I'm curious, maybe you've ever heard of telomeres before. Oh man, you guys are way ahead of the curve. So the telomeres are the little, they're like the little, you know, on the end of a shoelace, it has a little plastic thing, it's called an amulet or aglet. Thank you, the aglet. They look like that on the end of the chromosome. And what they do is they determine the health of your chromosomes. They are determinative in the aging process. They are determinative around depression. They are determinative around disease. So it's really important to have healthy telomeres. And so what do those little telomeres need to be healthy and robust? They need positive energy. They need affirmations. They need support. They need omega-3s. They need sunshine. They need movement. But they really, really, really need that positive compassion that we can offer ourselves, just like we would offer it to somebody else. So, just to take this one more level here before we close up, there's a mystery in Christianity and other spiritual beliefs that is incredibly profound, deeply profound. And that is the life, death, and resurrection of the Christ. Another way to say it is, unless a grain of wheat falls to the earth and dies, it just remains a grain of wheat. But if it falls to the earth and dies, it will bear much fruit. Right? Another way to say it, if you're in a 12-step program, is the only way around something is through. Right? Some of you have heard that before. Native American teachers talk about the natural cycle of the seasons of life, of new life, surrendering to the cycle of losing life and having something come up and be renewed. The shift that you were referring to, Catherine. The shift that happens. And so how inside of ourselves do we create an environment for the shift to happen? Number one, creating a listening environment for whatever it is that's going on inside of ourselves. Just like those little kids at the beginning of the presentation that I'm doing here today that raised their hand, and they had all kinds of strategies to avoid being with what was vulnerable or being with what was hurting. So for us, just like I said last week, where the Buddha in his enlightened moment said that the key for his enlightenment was being a good enough mother, holding the wounded places, holding the powerful places, so that a shift could happen in Grace's good own time. It means we're not in control of it. We can let go of the end. Cultivating an environment of compassion surrendering into experiences of awe and wonder, having safety inside as much as we can for vulnerability, and having clear boundaries for what's okay and what's not okay for us. Deep calling deep. The deep divine spirit of creation that manifests and experiences and blesses others in us is calling from out there. A lot of times we get the ping, and if we've been doing this a while, we go, oh man, this is divine energy, and I'm going to go right to it. There was a time in my life when I would get the ping, and my body would resonate with this person, or this activity, or this college, or this speaking opportunity, or whatever. And I'd go the other way because I'd be frightened. I'd get the ping and go toward the one that was not energized and conscious. Like Jonah, exactly. And ultimately, though, that changed by creating a listening environment in ourselves, cultivating compassion for ourselves, surrendering into experiences of awe and wonder, which are connections to the spiritual, and safety for vulnerability, and boundaries and structure. So we're going to go into this on the 23rd in my workshop that I'll be providing here about how that oftentimes translates into abundance, and however you might define abundance. For some people, it's divine prosperity in terms of money. For some people, it's better or more deep relationships. For some people, it's just feeling better in their own skin. For others, it's traveling around the world. But it's deep calling on deep. And if we don't have a connection, like a really friendly and open connection to what's going on in our own body, we're going to miss a lot of stuff that's God sending, and it's just kind of floating right by. So in closing, I wanted to, and this is the part where I'll go to the Rodney Dangerfield piece and say, I'm all right now, but 20 years ago I was in rough shape. Because what was going on 20 years ago is I was one of those people, maybe you see the movie Spotlight? Spotlight was a movie about kids who had been sexually abused by clergy in the Boston Archdiocese. And I was one of those kids in that very first cohort that started the ball rolling in what has become really a worldwide movement to hold the Catholic Church accountable for really the horrible things that have happened to kids. And it was painful then, but really right now, I am transformed and feel a sense of grace and power from that place where that happened to me. But one of the things that was going on then is I was going to Unity in Houston, and I was really doing a lot of prayer around destruction internally from what I had felt. Because when you're abused by a priest, it really feels like it's God. It's this is God, right? And so this priest then said, if you tell anybody that Satan is going to come and kill you and kill your family. So, right now, you're going to think, what would I say to him as an adult? But then as you're like a little 7-year-old kid, it's like, wow, that's some scary business. So I was going to Unity and I was like, oh my gosh, doing these affirmations and really surrendering into prosperity consciousness and 4T and other practices like that. And the more I would believe in my own goodness, in my own divinity, in my own prosperity, my own beauty, my own creativity, my own divine energy, I was feeling pretty good. And then, not too long afterwards, I would just get waves of terror. Like I was doing something wrong. Because if you feel like you're worth it, then the pain of what happened just starts to come up. It's like, you get to move toward the sunshine of truth. And then all this stuff starts to come up, and it becomes like a eclipse. Like you can't get by it. And so, what I was doing was I was listening to my body. Sometimes sleepless nights, sometimes nausea, sometimes headaches, all those kind of things. And I knew that if I didn't create a welcoming, respective, kind, compassionate relationship with myself, then I was doing like these priests did, and just being violating and intrusive and boundaryless. And I didn't want to do that to myself. So if I was feeling angry, I would try to create a warm acceptance of my anger. Or if I was feeling sad, I would just be okay with the fact that I'm going to be sad today. And during that time, and this is one of the things that I thank unity so much for, is when I would get overwhelmed with the darkness, which is very common. Two of the guys that started that lawsuit with me, they committed suicide before it was ever adjudicated. Painful stuff. If you haven't seen that movie, check it out. It's very poignant and very true, very accurate portrayal. So when I would start to feel overwhelmed with this negative bodily felt sense energy, I would get on a plane and I would fly here to Santa Fe. And I would literally walk Canyon Road and go into all those incredibly beautiful museums and look at the artwork. And then I'd go to the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture, and then I would go to the IAI Museum, and then I would go to the George O'Keeffe Museum, and I would just walk around getting the felt sense of so much artistic beauty, which was exactly what I did when I worked with the IAI, and the kids would start to feel depressed. I'd say, go to the museum and look at the artwork of your aunts and your uncles and your grandmothers and others, and just see the beauty and see if you can let that percolate in. So when I would come to Santa Fe, really just in kind of a dark but okay place, I would come in here to this church, and I would sit right back there in one of those corners. And I remember several of you, I remember from back then. And this little church created that caring, gentle, welcoming, safe, compassionate environment that I would want to bring into my life at that time. So, mostly I just want to say thank you and reiterate how grateful I am to get to be here now to present. But sometimes just saying our prayers and showing up changes the arc of a person's life for a long haul. And this little church, with me sitting right back, I think where you are, Richard, usually is where I park because it was quick to get out the door, really transformed me and helped allow me now to feel very comfortable and powerful in a good way, divinely powerful in my own skin. And this church was part of that, so I can't really express gratitude enough. And as I travel around the country, I meet people like you in companies. It's usually people who are unity practitioners, truth practitioners, people in recovery. And I found this quote that really speaks to this phenomenon around the country, where many of us serve as sort of like the yeast in the organizations that we interact with. And it goes like this. It says, there are people everywhere who form a fourth world. They can be Christians, Hindus, or Muslims, or Jews, or pagans, or atheists. They can be young or old, men or women, soldiers or pacifists, rich or poor, having religion or none at all. They may be patriots, but they are never chauvinists. When you are among them, you know you will not be mocked or resented, because they will not care about your race, your faith, your sex, or your nationality. And they suffer fools if not gladly, at least sympathetically. They laugh easily. They are easily grateful. They are never mean. They are not inhibited by fashion, public opinion, or political correctness. Sometimes they're exiles in their own communities or workplaces, because they're always in a minority. But they form a mighty nation, if only they knew it. So you guys were that mighty nation for me at a very critical time in my life. Now, in the places that I believe you work or interact in, you guys are that mighty nation. And there's probably no time more when that's been more needed than right now. That we can be the yeast that raises these systems in a healthy and beautiful way. We can be the light of the world. We can be the salt of the earth. In fact, we are. And never underestimate that power. And sometimes we don't have to say anything. We just show up with the radiant power of creation in us and allow that to change and transform the systems, families, and communities, projects that we work on. So with that, I would say thank you so much for your kind attention today. And we'll move into a meditation that will have be a chance to practice some of the principles that I'm sharing about today. So it's going to be a quick meditation. So if it feels okay, if you want to get into a comfortable position, and possibly close your eyes if that feels right. And I invite you now to close your eyes and allow yourself to grow quiet inside. And see if you can recall with your body's inner eye a time in your life when you felt compassion, unconditional love, or caring from another person, or a pet, or a special place. It could be when you were a child, or another time in your life. If you're able to simply see this special presence again, notice how it feels in your body to be in this place with this person, or special pet, or special presence. Notice what it feels like in your body to be with this person, or place, or pet. How did they convey their love to you in a body way? How did they show you their care? Perhaps noticing the colors, the way they were dressed, the sound or timbre of their voice. See if you can let go into how all that feels inside right now. Just to remember being in the presence of this loving person or place or pet. See if you can let go just fully into how that feels right now. Just to switch gears just a little bit, I invite you now to recall a time with your body's inner eye when you felt compassion, unconditional love, or affection towards some person or special place or pet. This is you showing compassion, love, toward a special person, place, or pet. Perhaps noticing the expression on their face or their body posture as you were with them in this loving way. If it is a place, then just notice the feeling in your body as you are in that place in an appreciative or caring way. And perhaps take some time to be with the body feel of caring for another in this way. Noticing where in my body do I feel this feeling of love, compassion, or caring. then finally, just taking a moment to ask yourself, what might it be like to have someone be with me in this way? When I am hurting or sad or shy. And then ask yourself, what might it be like if I could be gentle and caring with myself in this same way? To be able to say to those hurting places inside, I care. I'm here for you. Not to change or fix you or get rid of you, just to be with you and listen to your story. And finally now, perhaps to begin to leave that image behind, knowing that you can come back to it later, if you would like. Perhaps you may want to picture it gently getting smaller and smaller and moving into a part of yourself, maybe your heart, or chest, or hands, or wherever it may feel right to go. And then when you are ready, simply, gently, and slowly open your eyes. Acknowledging the divinity within you and around you. And hoping that as we move forward in our service today and out where the rubber meets the road, that we may have a little bit of a better friend than maybe when we came in with. That we can offer the same compassion, truth, affirmations to those places inside of us that are vulnerable, not to get rid of those vulnerable places, but to transform those vulnerable places in their own time.